In this video, we're going to be solving a word problem. And this word problem actually deals with a system of equations. Now, as you can see, just by looking at it, we're not given the system of equations. So we're going to have to create our two equations that will become our system of equations and then solve them. So the problem says, find the value of two numbers if their sum is 12 and their difference is 4. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the first half of the sentence up to the end, and we're going to create our first equation from that. So it says find the value of two numbers if their sum is 12. So let's say our two numbers are going to be x and y. Okay, so we're told that their sum is 12. What does sum mean? Well, in math, sum is addition. Okay, so that means if we add our two numbers, so x plus y, if we add them together, they are going to equal 12. Okay, and we're going to call that our first equation in our system. Now, let's look at after the and. It says their difference is 4. So the same two numbers have a difference of 4, which means if we subtract one number from the other number, the difference is going to be 4. Now, it doesn't matter if we write x minus y or y minus x, but typically we would just write x minus y. You're not doing it wrong if you did it the other way though, okay? Because we're looking for two numbers, but we don't know which one is larger than the other, okay? We're not given any more information saying maybe x is larger than y or vice versa. So it does not matter how we write this, which order we write it. X minus y, y minus x. In this case, it doesn't matter, okay? So we know that the difference between x and y is equal to 4. So that gives us our second equation, x minus y equals 4. So now we have our system. We have two equations. Now, there's more than one way you can solve a system of equations. There's substitution, where we would take one of our equations, isolate one of the variables, and then substitute that information into our other equation, solve for the one variable, substitute back, and solve for the other variable. That's a lot of steps. And that's okay. Substitution is actually one of the clearer ways to solve a system of equations. But we can also use the addition method, okay? And in this case, the addition method actually might be simpler. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to do exactly what it sounds like. We're going to add the two equations, one to each other. And we're going to actually add it this way, down. Okay, so we have to make sure everything lines up. So we have our x variables lined up, our y variables not lined up, and our number terms, they're also lined up. Now, another thing that's really important if we're going to be adding two equations together is see how we have the equal sign? They need to line up as well, okay? So if the number, say this number term was on the left-hand side of the equal sign, but this number term was on the right-hand side, we couldn't just add them, okay? So we have to have the terms, they have to line up into each other, and they have to be on the correct side of the equal sign. When I say correct, all I mean is they need to be on the same side of the equal sign. It doesn't matter which side, okay? All right. Now, the reason I said adding these two equations together would be simple is because the goal obviously is to get rid of one variable, right? Is to get an answer in terms of just one variable. We can solve that for a number term, and then we can take that information, substitute it into one of the other equations, and then get our second term, our second number. So the reason why I like the idea of adding them was because right away I can see if I add x plus x, that's going to give me 2x. But if I add y plus negative y, that's 0, right? So they canceled out. So now I just have one variable, okay? So I'm going to write the 0 there. Then I carry down my equal sign, and then I add my two number terms, 12 plus 4, and it gives me 16. Okay, now all I need to do is simply isolate my x variable, and I'll know what x is equal to. Okay, how do we do that? Well, we simply do the opposite operation. Okay, so right now we have 2 times x. So if we were to divide this by 2, these 2's would cancel, we'd be left with x. But we need to divide every term in our equation by 2. Otherwise, we've just changed our equation, okay? We're no longer dealing with what we started with. And we can ignore this 0. So what do we have to do now? We just need to simplify. 2 divided by 2 is just 1. 1 times x is simply x. And we have that equal to 16 over 2, which is the same as 16 divided by 2, and that equals 8. Okay, we now have our x value. So we know one of our numbers. We need to find out our other number. Okay, so we take this x value, and we're going to substitute it back into one of these equations. I'm going to substitute it into this first equation. Okay, the reason I'm doing that is because if we're solving for y, see how this is a positive y? That'll make it one less step, okay? We could substitute it into our second equation, but then we'll have to do an extra step to solve. So it's not wrong. You can't do it wrong by substituting it into a different equation, but I'm just trying to go as fast as possible, okay? Or make things as simple as possible. So we're going to take this x, which is 8. We're substituting that in for the x there. That's going to then be plus y equals 12. Okay. I need to move this 8, right? I want the y by itself. Now, what's going on with this 8? I put these brackets there just to show that I substituted in, but I can just drop those brackets, okay? There's nothing in front of them. There's no multiplication. There's no different sign or anything like that going on, so I can just drop those brackets. So I really just have 8 plus y. Okay, so once again, I need to do the opposite action. If I have 8 plus y, then I need to either subtract 8 from both sides, or this means the same thing, add a negative 8. So I'm going to do add, and I've got my negative 8 here. Okay, so if I'm adding a negative 8 to both sides of my equation, remember, I can't just do it to one side. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. Okay, so I've got my negative 8 plus 8, those two cancel, and I'm left with just this y on my left-hand side. Now on the right-hand side, I've got a 12 plus negative 8. Well, I want to drop these brackets, so I'm going to multiply this sign, the positive, times this sign, the negative, and every time I multiply either a positive and a negative or a negative and a positive, my answer is always negative. So this is simply just 12 minus 8, which we knew because remember before I said we can either subtract 8 or minus 8 from both sides, or we can add a negative 8. It means the exact same thing. So we have y is equal to 12 minus 8, and 12 minus 8 is simply 4. Okay, so we now have our two numbers, x equals 8 and y equals 4. So that's it. We solved our system of equation word problem, and we found that one of our numbers is 8 and one of our numbers is 4. If you would like to learn how to quickly study for your GED exam online and get a new resume, then visit testprepskills.com.